Neoliberalism is the idea that society works best when it's run by the free market and not the government. It's the belief that the most efficient way to distribute goods and services is by handing them over to the private sector. I know that sounds abstract, but you've definitely heard neoliberal thinking a lot in your life. Do you really want the government in charge of your healthcare? They're so slow and wasteful. Why not private insurance? Neoliberalism. If you keep giving people government handouts, they'll never learn to fend for themselves. You're creating a country of dependence. Neoliberalism. If you really want to help people, you should cut taxes and regulations. Let the private sector flourish.
You know, I like it that he portrays the guy who wants to not have his money taken away from him by the government as a selfish person with a martini glass, and he's just some rich guy and that all of them are rich. And by like, I mean I absolutely think it's retarded.
Neoliberals oppose government control of the economy, which is why, unlike a lot of developed countries, the US does not offer things like universal healthcare, free college, paid sick leave, or a bunch of other basic shit. If you want something in this country, you need to buy it on the free market. And that means you need to work.
Oh no, you have to work to get things you want. Oh, that is so awful. It's a fact of reality, dude. You can't get things for free. Everything costs money. When they say free college, free healthcare, all of that, it's not free. That is a misnomer. Everything is coming out of your pocket. It just depends on how much you want taken out of your pocket. If you want the government to do it, probably more of it's going to come out of your pocket because the government is usually very inefficient. And the only reason really why the healthcare system in the United States is so expensive is because of government regulations. If the number of regulations was significantly reduced, the cost would fall drastically. The other factor you have to look at is quality. Government-run healthcare, things like that, are usually very inefficient. The quality is low because everything is significantly slower. While with the private sector, even though it's highly regulated, is still quite a bit faster. And it would probably be even faster if we had fewer regulations.
You want medicine and a place to live? Get a job. You want time off so you can be with your family? Get a better job. This is America, baby. If you don't have enough, you're not working hard enough. Hashtag no days off. Hashtag sleep when you're dead. Hell yeah.
Yes, that is the reality of things. You have to work to take care of yourself. Not everyone has the luxury to not ever have to work. We don't live in a communist utopia, and communist utopias fail all the time. People have to work if they want to take care of themselves and if they want a better life. It's just a fact of, well, life.
And suddenly, millions of Americans are out of a job.
The coronavirus has left millions of Americans out of work.
6.6 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week.
Countless more are sick, or tending to the sick, or trying desperately not to become sick.
The entire U.S. economy is essentially at a standstill.
Entire sectors of the economy evaporate.
Except most of that is the government's fault that we have such high unemployment right now, because the government is forcing people to not go to work and businesses have to be closed. That's what the government is doing. Now, some of it is also caused by the virus, but most of it is the government's involvement. And yes, things like this will happen. It's also a fact of reality. And quite frankly, this is a government failure, if anything, because the government failed to be prepared for this. And they prevented the private sector with helping. But let's look at the other ways governments have failed. China, for example, failed, or more like so, chose not to tell anyone about what was really going on. And same thing with the WHO organization, also chose not to tell what was actually going on. So, this is government and an organization and government's failure to prepare. So, it's pretty much government's fault. We are in the majority of this mess. And now you want to give the government more control of things when they up real big?
Neoliberalism. What is it? Who owns it? And can I make it work for you? Let's say you're a boss, trying to win big on the free market. And trust me, in this economy, you want to be a boss. Your job is to maximize profits. So, what salary should you pay the employees who work for you? What? Ew. No. You don't pay them what their labor is worth. What are you, a communist? You pay them the lowest possible amount they'll work for. And when people don't have a government safety net to fall back on, they'll work for just about anything. Exactly. See, we're already winning. Look at those profits.
Boy, is that very dishonest. Businesses and entrepreneurs, they don't make a whole lot of money, if at all, because a large percentage of businesses fail within the first 5 to 10 years. And if they do manage to survive, they don't make a whole lot. So no, it's not like they have this massive amount of money with them. Businesses and entrepreneurs, most of them, they don't make a whole lot of money, especially in their early years. Now, some of them do eventually make quite a bit of money, but they deserve that because they took the risk. And to say that they don't deserve that money, despite them taking that risk, is absolutely retarded. That is selfish of you and of other people.
Say you're a businessman and you've come to the free market to sell things like healthcare and housing. Pretty valuable goods you got there. So, what price should you sell them for? What? No. God damn it. What did I just tell you? What is this, a non-profit? Jesus.
This is businesses having to charge as much as they can because they have to make a profit. Now, usually it's relatively quite low because there's a bunch of competition. There are certain areas, sectors in the market where they might have a huge margin of profit. But the majority of businesses don't have a huge margin of profit. So they have to charge as much as they can to make a profit, and a good amount of a profit, to not only be able to cover their costs, but also to be worth it to be in business.
You don't price your goods at their actual value. You sell them at the highest possible price people will pay for them. And here's the gag. When it comes to stuff like housing and healthcare, people will pay just about anything not to die on the street. I know.
Except that's not how it works. That's absolutely not how it works. For healthcare, there's obvious reasons why it's expensive because of the government. Now for housing, that's also a reason why it's so expensive in many areas. For example, in California, our housing is so expensive because of, housing laws. And there's also the zoning laws, which also make it expensive. But if we got rid of those or significantly reduced them, these things would go drastically down in price because more businesses and people can invest in these things and build up businesses, creating competition, therefore lowering the costs even further. See, when the market gets into it, it levels it out to where people will want to buy a product. That is the market value. And again, these people aren't in it for charity. They're in it to not just help people. It's also to make money for themselves because these people do want to make money and they are risking their livelihood on these investments, on these businesses. And if you don't like the amount someone is charging for you for your house or your healthcare, go to another provider. Or if you want to pay for that higher priced house or building or whatever it be, or that better healthcare, then cut your costs in other areas. There are ways around these things.
Suckers, right? This is neoliberalism's ideal economy. Without Big Brother getting in the way, big businesses are making big profits, and everyone else is working harder than ever to stay alive. The free market, baby. maximum efficiency.
Except it's not just big businesses. There's a lot of medium and small businesses. Not every apartment building is owned by a big business. Not every clothing store or gift shop is a big business. There are far more small businesses and medium-sized businesses than there are large corporations.
As the coronavirus pandemic ravages this entire globe, it's essential to talk about one component of this conversation that cannot be understated, and that's how private sector capitalism has exacerbated this crisis.
Except it hasn't at all. In fact, it's actually the government that has exacerbated this crisis.
We could have easily mitigated this to a significantly more effective degree, as I'm going to outline in subsequent parts of this video, if we weren't as reliant on private sector capitalism and a system that's predicated on expanding profit margins rather than maximizing the well-being of the people living in a particular community or a particular nation.
Except businesses are for that as well, because that is part of their profit motive. What people want is what businesses want. What businesses want is what people want. Businesses provide what people want.
So first, what has to be brought up is the healthcare system. In a capitalist country, oftentimes the healthcare system is largely built on expanding profits and exploiting people who are sick rather than giving them the necessary treatments. This ramification of a system that's built on profits and exploiting people is seen in the United States, where because for-profit health insurance companies want to make a profit off of sick people, they're giving them the free test to see if they have coronavirus. But if they actually have the virus, they're forced to pay expensive bills. Some people have to pay tens of thousands of dollars. Poor people have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get treatment for a virus that is so significantly fatal, even worse than the H1N1 flu from 2009.
Except there's a problem with your thing there, is the fact that the US government has destroyed competition in the healthcare sector. That is why the healthcare sector is predominantly controlled by large corporations. The healthcare sector is heavily regulated. That is why it's so expensive. I've said this so many times.
That's just one way how capitalism has negatively affected the way we mitigate the coronavirus. Another way is that workers are forced to work even when it's non-essential work because the captains of industry and the profiteers want to keep forcing them to work. A primal example of this would be GameStop. GameStop is a company that sells video games. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's non-essential retail, and yet they still force their workers to come by lying and claiming they're essential retail. GameStop wants to profit off of people, playing video games in this time of pandemic.
These companies, do they want to make a profit? Yes. But is it because they're being malicious? No. Are there some malicious people within corporations and businesses? Yes. But for the most part, are most people? No. These people want to make a profit. Yes, as I have said. But they have to make a profit, otherwise they go bankrupt. And do you know what happens then? People will be unemployed without a job once this whole thing ends. So there's nothing selfish about a business wanting to continue to have its employees work, because if they don't, they will likely go out of business. Or they will have to significantly cut their costs. And a lot of those areas will be employees. So it's not just a malicious thing that, you have to work because you gotta make me money. No, it's because if they don't, they will go bankrupt. And once they go bankrupt, people are out of jobs. Wow, such a shocker, isn't it?
That shows you the perverted incentive put in place because of capitalism. And furthermore, you're seeing the government spending trillions of dollars trying to bail out these large companies, whether it be from the airplane industries, whether it be the movie theaters, whether it be these various industries, because since workers don't own the means of production, because it's a system predicated on the capitalist class thriving, the mega wealthy, the billionaires thriving, money that could be spent investing in the people, money that could be spent to reallocate resources to benefit the actual people across the globe. Instead, a significant amount of that money, an insurmountable amount of that money, is spent propping up private multinationals and corporations that have struggled because of this pandemic. And so you're essentially trying to prop up artificially a system that has failed the people, which is private sector capitalism.
Again, the private sector hasn't failed no one. Now, should those corporations have been bailed out? I don't think so. I don't particularly like bailouts. Not for corporations, not for small businesses, not for individual people. That doesn't mean I'm not for the government helping people when they absolutely need it. For like this case with the coronavirus, I do think people need help in certain ways. For example, just providing food, water, maybe some housing if needed. That's pretty much it. And even maybe some minimal health care if absolutely needed, if they need a government and they can't go to the private sector. Especially, I would prefer the local and state governments handling this. This is not so much the federal government's job. The federal government can help with in some areas, yes, but predominantly I believe this should be the state and local government's job. But again, to your point about the big corporations being bailed out, no, I don't particularly like that. Do I think they should be bailed out? No.
Consequence of private sector capitalism exacerbating this crisis is demonstrated by the lack of necessary goods we've built in order to deal with this crisis. This might seem like a ridiculous assertion to make. Doesn't capitalism maximize, productivity? Aren't we building the resources necessary to deal with this crisis? Actually, no. We're borrowing masks and other goods from Italy, which Italy gets from Vietnam. And why is that? Because under capitalism, a significant amount of labor is spent. This is demonstrated in the bread book, classic Peter Kropotkin literature. A significant amount of the goods that are built by the workers is built for the needs of the luxuries of the wealthy and the rich. Unnecessary goods are oftentimes created in a capitalist system, and it's wasting time that could be spent building necessary resources, creating ventilators, creating masks, creating the necessary resources to mitigate these crises.
Okay, that is bull what you said there. Again, this isn't capitalism's fault. This isn't any business's fault, because businesses are and were being prevented from helping people. They were being prevented from creating masks because they weren't following these particular regulations, or they weren't approved by the FDA or the CDC, because government has prevented these companies from actually helping people. These businesses offered to help. Many hospitals also offered to help with testing, but they were prevented from helping. These companies, these businesses were prevented from helping people because of government. And the reason why we have a shortage to even start with is because the governments, specifically the US government, but also other governments, I would assume so too, did not prepare for it.
In a socialist system, it's been outlined by a significant amount of socialist literature. When scarcity occurs, resources are directly reallocated so every single individual has what they need. But in this private sector market structure, we have significant amounts of pockets. If you have a large pocketbook, if you're wealthy, you can, buy up the resources. It doesn't have to be evenly distributed. The scarce goods don't have to be evenly distributed. And you see the consequence of that.
You serious?
Seriously, why would you say something so stupid? I mean, by God, that was so stupid. In so many ways. I'll have my sources, obviously, down below if you want to check them out, so go ahead.
The right thinks socialism is versus what socialism is. A MP, it looks like, or whatever Australia calls these people, Malcolm Roberts. Australia gets a bit of socialism, and it's, empty shelves because people are panic buying because of coronavirus. And,
right.
And then we could just go to a client state. I believe this is South Korea.
Vietnam.
Or is it Vietnam? Western media won't talk about it. Oh yeah, but the Vietnamese government is helping citizens fight the coronavirus by offering free proper meals for people in quarantine areas and free groceries and necessities for a whole neighborhood in lockdown. Mm-hmm. And we don't have we don't have the spirit that we're owed that here. And it's horrifying.
Are you sure you want to use Vietnam as an example? The country with an undernourishment percentage of 9%, while compared to the US, it has had a 2.5%. Now also comparing the US to other Western developed nations like Canada and Sweden, also at 2.5%. But again, Vietnam, 9% undernourishment rate. There's also some other factors. Let's go with also the factor that Vietnam isn't socialist. It has freed up its economy in a similar way to that of China. They are a highly regulated economy, yes, like China. However, they aren't socialist or communist. Now, are they closer to socialism than that of the United States or any Western country? Yeah, but they still aren't quite socialist either. Now, some other things to look at to show how Vietnam is not a good example is the fact of its wages. How much you make in Vietnam. Because the median average salary in the city that pays you the most in the average amount is $456 a month. Or annually, that is $5,465. Now, I will give that the cost of living is significantly lower, but probably not enough to really make much of a difference, considering the fact that in the United States, the average monthly salary someone makes a year after taxes is over $59,000. And again, this is after taxes. And of course, there are other things to look at by the factor of, well, their civil rights that they have, their civil liberties, their political liberties, their freedom, which is, well, pretty much nothing. And their internet freedom is also pretty much nothing. So I don't know if Vietnam is the best example to use. But also, again, like I said to the other people, none of this is capitalism's fault. This is government's fault. Okay? Anyways, I'm done with this video. If you liked it, give it a like, share it, comment down below and tell me what you thought. Subscribe to my channel, because I'm wanting to aim for that goal of 1,000 subs. And if you really like my content, considering donating to my Patreon or to my Ko-fi. So, do all that, and I'll see y'all later.